took my easing on that step on, sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Is there another chair around or not? What do you got?
I'll probably try to bring my chairs.
I don't know, they were here.
Hey Troy.
Yeah.
How do you like that light level?
I like it.
Okay. Cool. Let's sit in here. These cameras all have green lights and that one has a red one.
The red one's the one that's going to show.
Okay.
That's they're called tally lights.
Okay.
And if I switch that one's red?
Yeah, the one right below you. I just wanted to make sure that doesn't mean anything bad.
It means, generally speaking, it means that is the camera, that is it green right now? Red? Oh yeah, it's in the queue. It's the next camera to be taken live. That means it's whatever. Generally speaking, this red means it's on and green means it's standing by.
Okay, cool.
But thank you for checking that.
You're
And then I've got
welcome.
that one little red one over there, and if you see right there, there's another little red one below the third camera.
Yes.
That one's just doing a record of the audio and video in the room with the battery, and so like if everything goes sideways,
We got a backup.
we got a wide shot. We have all the audio and video, so it's kind of
Okay.
nice. I thought I'd never use it, like I'd never really need it,
Yeah. No, you've got quite the setup.
but I used it a couple of weeks ago. They turned the power off in the room I was in during the show.
Lovely.
It
Love when that happens.
rebooted everything. The slides weren't working, and
Okay.
it's nice to have just in case. could do, maybe I should throw some applause in before, that's, points. A little crowd will roar.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Doesn't look very good though.
Huh?
Doesn't look very nice.
The water bottle?
Yeah, let's take it off. Should we just put it? I was just gonna give Alyse a sip of water before she left Lena on stage.
Sure.
I don't think that looks very good.
Let's put them to the side.
Yeah.
We see them choking.
If they want it.
Thank you.
But if they
We
want
see
it.
like a clear
Thank you.
indication that they're struggling, that's what comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
only
take
an
an
hour.
hour. Hopefully we'll be okay. I think we should open the doors now, just so we're starting people seated. So I'm gonna have you wait here, getting people into the front. Thank you. You're okay up there? Should I sit over here so I can like glance at you if you need something? It doesn't matter either way. Okay. How's it going, Jackie? It's going well. How are you? Good.
It's funny, my trip was, I did Beirut, I think it was in Beirut before.
I love it. And it gets under your skin. I mean, now it breaks my heart. I mean, I cry too. Because it's
Right, right. We had an amazing time. What government we have, it's barely a government.
But then so I moved there, and then
But
my
you were-
family had to leave, they had
Where
to
are they
leave
based?
in Sweden, well, yeah, in Sweden. So
Where are you from?
I'm born in Göteborg, but then Stockholm is
Or which part were you?
well, we have a house in Berlin. That's where my husband and my two youngest kids are now. But this is
So my wife, her name is Marielle Sanders, she's the UNHCR rep in Fiji, and she's gonna be, she's a
okay.
So I've got a
Yes. Oh, yeah, sweetheart. I mean, the winters and the Octobers and Novembers and Februarys are dreadful, but the Swedish summer is beautiful and vibrant.
You guys ready to roll? Good morning, everybody. How's everybody? I want to welcome you all to Vital Voices and our Global Embassy for Women Leaders. Thank you so much. We're coming to you today from Washington, D.C. For those of you who are online, thank you for joining us online. We're also live streaming on YouTube. And I want to welcome all of you to this 60-minute panel discussion on localization and the future of women's leadership in Ukraine. My name is Alan Friedman. I lead our crisis response team here at Vital Voices. And I'm going to do a quick introduction of our panelists, and then I'm going to turn it over for the discussion. So we're really, really pleased to be joined online. I see her there with Olena Shevchenko. Olena is a Ukrainian human rights defender and educator with a focus on LGBTQI and women's rights. In 2019, Olena co-founded Insight, which is an LGBTQI organization. Olena has been absolutely instrumental in leading Insight's advocacy efforts at the national and international level, and we are also extremely pleased to be working with Olena and her organization on a project funded by the U.S. State Department to respond and support survivors of gender-based violence and document human rights abuses. We're also joined on the line somewhere, Olena is coming to us from Kyiv, and somewhere between Salzburg on a train headed to Kyiv. Hello, Karolina. We're joined by Karolina Soliar. Karolina, we're very happy for you to be here as well. She leads the localization project for the National Network of Local Philanthropy Development, which is a Kiev-based network of Ukrainian organizations that advocate for local philanthropy. Among its activities, the network published an open letter signed by 360 Ukrainian and supporting organizations outlining a 4-point plan to increase support to Ukrainian organizations. The network has been a leader in the push for localization and significant increase in support and funding to Ukrainian organizations. And of course, joining us here on the stage are Karolina Lindholm. She is the UNHCR representative in Ukraine, where there are currently 5 million internally displaced individuals who are outside of their homes because of the war and the long-term war in Ukraine going back to 2014. And Francesca Bonelli, who is in a country that's near and dear to my heart, where I started my career in Moldova, where there are approximately 160,000 refugees today. Welcome to you all. I'm going to turn it over also to Alyse Nelson, who is our CEO and president. Alyse, of course, we just got back from Ukraine, and I think that one of the lessons that we learned there is that we remain inspired, but also listening to the leadership of the Ukrainian people in their incredibly courageous fight for the values that we hold dear against totalitarianism, authoritarianism, equality, democracy, and the role of women's leadership. And I'm going to hand it over to you for the rest of the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. And I would certainly agree with you. I mean, Vital Voices has been working in Ukraine since our founding days. We've been working with women leaders there for 26 years. It's where we started our work. It holds an incredibly special place in our heart. One of the things that we have seen, the most astounding thing we've seen in these 26 years, is the growth and the strength and the power of civil society organizations, particularly those led by women. And I think all of us around the world saw that on display, obviously with this full-scale invasion by Russia of Ukraine back in February of 2022. And we were proud to play a small part in immediately supporting a network of 8 women's organizations across the country. And what we have learned in our, more than 2 decades of working around the world is that you can only change what you know. You can only lead and have an impact on communities that you work within. And so we know the power of localization. We know the power of supporting leaders directly in their vision for change. And obviously that's what we're going to be talking about today. As Alan mentioned, we have an extraordinary panel, and I'm really very much looking forward to this discussion. Karolina in the room from UNHCR, the representative in Ukraine. I want to start with you. One of the things that we have seen is a number of reports that have come out talking about, obviously, the huge influx of $3.7 billion of resources that have come into the country in the last year, but yet it's something like some studies show that it's less than 0.4% going directly to local Ukrainian organizations, the same organizations that led one of the most impressive homegrown humanitarian effort the world has ever seen. So talk a little bit about what you're seeing from your perspective. I would also love for you to talk about how you arrived in Ukraine to lead UNHCR's efforts in 2021. So you were there right from the beginning. Talk a little bit about the efforts in 2021, or even, I guess, starting in 2014, and how you've ramped those efforts up and worked locally with local organizations.
Thank you so much, and it's such a pleasure to be here and at the event hosted by Vital Voices, because me personally, I worked more than 24 years for UNHCR and in this field of work, and I have followed your work closely over the years, and you've always been an inspiration in your advocacy and evidence-based advocacy on the importance of women's leadership and active participation in society. So indeed, I mean, I arrived to Ukraine in May 2021, from Lebanon, where I had previously been posted, and the operation we then had was, of course, of a much smaller scale, but it was mainly focused in the east. We had offices in Mariupol, Sloviansk, Severodonetsk, and Donetsk and Lugansk. But it was a support to people impacted by the ongoing conflict there that indeed started in 2014, but it was kind of facing down. And, we were at that time exclusively working with local Ukrainian organizations. We had 8 NGO partners that we had worked with since 2014, 15, or 16. And our effort there was very much to support them to also become, independent and grow on their own. And a couple of them, Proleska, Right to Protection, over those years grew quite significantly from being small organizations to being, countrywide or like Proleska, a key partner in that part of Ukraine. And we also worked with part of our operational focus was mainly in the east, along this contact line, but we were also supporting IDP-led organizations across Ukraine, about 165 of them before the full-scale invasion, and in order to support them to have a political voice in the communities where they lived. So participating in so-called IDP councils in cities around Ukraine, where they would bring the experiences of being an internally displaced person in that city, in that hromada or oblast, to the local, decision makers, the city councils. And when the full-scale invasion then started, I can say it would have been impossible to scale up and contribute to that collective response without, that support. Because as you say, and I saw it very much directly, it was the local, ranging from volunteers to community-based organizations to local networks that were really at the forefront and have been, throughout. So I'm very glad that, we'll have the opportunity today to discuss a bit how can that support further, because that's key for Ukraine's recovery, progression moving forward, and for sustainability, that we support them and look at how to do that more. Just to finish, I can say today we work with, of the 21 organizations we work directly with as project partners, 13 are local NGOs, 4 are IDP-led organizations, so 17 out of the 21, and then 7 international NGOs and 1 UN organization. So majority, and 65% of the funding that we implement through partnership agreements goes to local NGOs.
Wonderful, thank you. Karolina, Soliar, I want to come to you because, as Alan mentioned, your organization, the National Network for Local Philanthropy, recently released this open letter, and he said more than 300 local organizations in Ukraine have already signed on to this letter. There's 4 key points to the letter. Can you just give us a snapshot? What are you and other organizations there calling for?
Yeah, sure. So I can't say that like that's recently because we've been working with this campaign for more than a year.
Do you know, I think we're having a hard time hearing you. Maybe what you could do is turn off your video, as much as I hate to ask you to do that. But it might, your sound might come in a little better that way. Okay, maybe not. Let's turn to you, Olena. Let me just say how absolutely thrilled Vital Voices is to be having the opportunity to partner with Insight on a new initiative we will be launching with support from the U.S. State Department. I have heard so much about you personally. Congratulations on being named by Time one of their Women of the Year. One of your many accolades. Talk a little bit about your work and some of the trends that you're seeing.
Well, taking into account, your previous questions, I would start with small facts. So basically, let me just remind you that during the first 5-6 months in Ukraine, there were just small organizations and volunteers, as you mentioned before, who did all the job. Because mostly we never received any support from international organizations or missions. So this is very important because it's showing how the civil society grew up during the, this transitional process, starting from Euromaidan. Mainly, honestly, we never had this experience in humanitarian work. So what happened? We, as a human rights organizations, initiatives, small organizations, a bit bigger organizations, just started to do everything possible to help directly those people who are in need. Honestly, being myself IDP, it was a very hard task because then you're just, have this continuous shelling, the shortage of food, water, everything. You even don't know if, the next missile will get to your house. It is quite hard to mobilize yourself and start to do something. But what we've learned, that funding is not the most valuable thing, honestly. During the first 6 months, we received mostly support from the small initiatives, from the friends which we had from our previous work together. Some volunteers from Poland, from Hungary, from Moldova, from Czech Republic, from Germany. They just brought many things to us so we can disseminate it and give it to those vulnerable communities. So inside, we can call ourselves like small local organization who previously mostly supported LGBTQI people, but we also active as a women's march who is supporting women. And now our activity is huge. We received more than 100,000 requests since the start of the war in different types of support, not even only in humanitarian. We also have psychological support, legal support, relocation, everything. And it's mostly done in the cooperation with the human rights foundations, not the humanitarian missions, because it is seriously very hard to get funding or access to this humanitarian support. When you are talking about localization, let me just tell you that the most important thing here is to be based on the local needs. So first, what you need to do to analyze the needs from the local context, because it's quite different from the previous, crisis situations, wars in different countries. Ukraine is not the same to other contexts. That's why we are suffering so much. That's why we have so many people under this line of poverty, it's not just, it's not enough. Just give them once the support they need. You also need, kind of combine the strategies of the humanitarian direct support and also the development support to support them in the resocialization in the new places. And it is, pretty hard task for local small organization who, as you mentioned, of course, receive some funding from the missions, humanitarian missions, but mostly through international organizations who came to Ukraine because it's a huge field of work. So we are not getting the most of the funding. Honestly, we are getting the small amount of those funding. It is not enough to give the support to people. In our case, we are not even given, some percentage on the salaries of people. We just put everything in the direct support. We finance, volunteers and other people from other sources, but it's not enough. And the main thing is that, unfortunately, it's still a huge gap between the need and what we get. That's the issue.
Thank you. Karolina, I want to try and come back to you. Let us know if
yeah.
Wonderful.
I will try the second go even better. Good.
Great.
So I wanted to say that, first of all, we are not that recently posted this letter. We are working for this advocacy campaign for more than a year. And during this time, we were able to reach to some donors who decided to try these practices. When we started, we came up with the 4 main directions of the change that we want to make. So the first one is a cut in the bureaucracy, because this is something that I totally join Olena on this point, that this is a huge gap. And the bureaucracy is stopping the small NGOs that don't have this ability even to produce 60 pages application to apply for the granting, or to produce the reporting. We have in our group chat with the team some photos of the last reporting which we did for the project of that we received a little bit less than $1 million, but it's huge. I mean, it's five folders which can be higher than me, and I'm 1.60 meters. So then the second point is about hearing the local voices. Today I'm really honored to speak, but it's it just started recently that Ukrainians are brought up to the conversations about Ukrainians. And unfortunately, you can see that on the decision-making panels or on the some summits of the donors where they directly discussing their abilities or their fundings to Ukraine, there are not that many local representatives. The third point is about neutrality and solidarity, because a lot of organizations in Ukraine now, for example, our community foundations who are part of our network, they've been doing a lot of cultural projects, social projects, but now they have to switch to deliver the humanitarian help because their principle is to be updated and to be efficient. The same we want to see from the international actors in the country who claim yourself to be solidar with the nations, is at least not to open offices in Russia and to be more flexible in funding the help to an army or something that close to an army needs. And the last point is exactly about the partnerships and equality. I think that's what's stopping also some international agency from funding the local organization that they used to work with them as a contractors, not as partners. And that means that contractors always receive less, and they are not a part of the decision-making process. So yeah, this is I think short run up about our 4 points in the letter.
So, as we mentioned, you've had more than 300 organizations in Ukraine sign on to this letter. Has there been any response?
Yeah, so it's not only Ukrainian, it's like half-half. So we have like half from Ukrainian, half from international community. And yeah, we like, first of all, the donors who were, and like the funds who saw this letter, they found for yourself some like partners. They started like funding some smaller local organizations in Ukraine. And I think the point that mostly we received kind of hate speeches, it's about our solidarity point, that we like can't demand it. And this is something that like NGOs want to keep for yourself. But yeah, we are working, and a few times after like detailed explanation why we need this and how this works, people start changing their minds. And also now we are planning to do a few pilot projects with like, unfortunately I can't like name the organizations because we didn't start the project yet. But yeah, so we are preparing the pilot project exactly on this, like to combine this 4 points in action, and want to share some like good cases as well.
Great, thank you. Francesca, I want to bring you into this conversation. You are UNHCR's representative in Moldova, and of course Moldova was certainly one of the countries receiving a number of refugees from Ukraine crossing over into the country. Moldova is a very small country, beautiful country, very small country of, you said 2 million. The population is 2 million people, yet nearly, well, more than 800,000 people, Ukrainian people, crossed over following the invasion. What my team had said, who was there in early March of 2022, when they went to Poland and Romania and Moldova, just how impressed they were, actually among the 3 countries, to see such a small nation band together and really support Ukrainians coming into the country. Can you talk a little bit about those early days, and then what's going on now, and how do you continue to support that localization and local leadership?
Thank you very much, and thank you to Vital Voices for this opportunity and your everyday support to Women Voice. That in Moldova was really, I can say, since the beginning of the war, a women response of the emergency, because since 24th of February we had thousands and thousands of refugees. 65% till now are women, and as Alyse saying, the local organization were the first to be at the border to receiving refugees. They were there already and immediately willing to support with their local capacity. I arrived in Moldova at the beginning of March. UNHCR was not present in Moldova at all. So we had, as an international community, also being immediately ready to build up the emergency response, to stand by the government, to stand by the civil society. But the beginning and the start energy and the positive example that Moldova gave is thanks to the local population, to the civil society, that really with all their energy, and I will stress with their humanity, because Moldova is the poorest country in Europe. The economy also before the wars was really in a difficult situation for COVID, for the energy crisis. Nevertheless, they gave all their best, and they are still giving this solidarity to refugees. The beginning, it was very difficult because not only as UNHCR we were not there, but there was the willingness, but the gap was the capacity to manage a high demanding crisis. So the challenge was to put up a safe response. The biggest challenge at the beginning was at the border, because thousands of women with their children were arriving in a desperate state. I saw myself women say goodbye to their husband at the border, giving a kiss, and crossing the border seeing the desperation in their eyes to say, what will happen tomorrow to me and to my children? Will I see again my husband? This was really, I worked more than 24 years with refugees, and I have to say this was very painful. We were at the border, and this moment was the most difficult, and I would say the most risky, because taxi drivers were there. Nothing was at the borders. It was just the border check and nothing else. So taxi drivers were there, bus, who knows who was there. Maybe the majority were willing the best, but also Ukraine and Moldova was, before the war, very high risk of trafficking. And with this situation was even more risky. So the fact that we were present there together with the local organization, with international organization, to put up a place that was safe of arrival. And you mentioned more than 50,000 refugees arrived. The biggest part moved sometime in the same day to Romania, to onward movement. So the priority was give safe transport, to ensure that the transport was safe and there were people to give their immediate support, it was medical, psychosocial, sometimes even a hug could be very strong, but to be there and to say, okay, you are not alone, we are here to make sure that you are safe and you can continue your journey, or if you want to stay in Moldova, you will find a safe place. So the beginning, I would say, presence at the border, shelter capacity, because we put up places in all public infrastructure, schools, sports center, fair, residents of the university. The government gave public spaces that we renew, we rehabilitate in order to welcome refugees in a dignified way. And we were very careful also in terms of all the coordination to include as much as possible the local community, the local organization. Casa Mario Rei is one of very active gender-based violence partner, and they were the first to say, we are having few shelter for women, we open them to refugee women, and so we start to work with them. But at a certain point, I have to say I had a very challenging meeting in September with the local women organization that they called us, and I was with the UN women representative, and they were very open and very vocal in saying, you are giving a lot of support, but you are not listening to us. You work very much in Chisinau, that is the capital, but Moldova is very much agricultural focused country. The rural community are very strong. You are not taking in consideration our voice. So it was very challenging from one side, but also very constructive to see how we can learn together. Because I believed in the challenge of this more than 500 days from the beginning of the war. We have also an opportunity to learn from each other and to see how we can improve and make things better also in terms of humanitarian and women-led organization. And I would like also to stress the fact that like Leolalta director, Leolalta is a local organization that was created by volunteers, the majority are women. And at the beginning of the war, they organized a local network of local community, including also refugees from the first stage. And they were saying that the Moldova response is a feminist response. The president of Moldova, Maia Sandu, is a very strong woman, very powerful in her commitment and energy. Prime Minister till a few months ago was a woman, and in the government there are many very committed women that are trying also to move away from a past of corruption and give to the country the opportunity of democratization and the country the opportunity to progress and to increase not only in the solidarity but also for the local community, local women also. So I wanted to stress this point because women refugees and women from the local community are playing a very important role. And as we speak in Moldova, in Belt, in one of the city in the north of the country, this morning for Moldova time happened local coordination meeting that included local organizations. So this was our path that at the beginning, because the emergency was so demanding to immediately create services and create the basis and the capacity of the government, we were fast, but we were not fully inclusive. And now our commitment is really to continue this dialogue path. We increased the Refugee Coordination Forum from 2 local organizations, now has 45 local organizations. And this is very important, as we spoke before, the fact that it's a learning path, and I believe is an opportunity for all of us to contribute to a better future. We cannot cancel the past, but we can all contribute to make a better future. And many of the refugee women that are in Moldova now are leading local organization, refugees-led organization, and are contributing a very important efforts to the progress of the country.
I want to open it up in just a minute to the audience if people have questions, or if online we have questions. But I want to come back to you, Karolina, in the room, because is this not an opportunity for reform? I mean, I think that the experience that you've had, already working with 165 local organizations in Ukraine. So you had that incredible base by which to work. In Moldova, having incredible leadership of women in the government, that helped to shape that response. Certainly what we saw, certainly when we were there last month, but really in the days and months after the invasion began, we saw women who were leading organizations focused on combating violence or human trafficking quickly shift to support those internally displaced, really setting up this internal network to support women, safe transport between countries or within the country. To us, it was so inspiring. And so I think all of us here would agree that to not have locally led organizations, Ukrainian leaders at the center of not just the response and how do we get through this, but in rebuilding, that we all know this is critical. Is this an opportunity in Ukraine to create reform that would have an impact beyond Ukraine and other countries around the world, and how humanitarian efforts are mounted?
Absolutely. And I think that, as was also said, I mean, the Ukraine response, there are definitely similarities to that response, that emergency to others, but there are also significant differences. And I think there is an active discussion, recognition that, first of all, it is local organizations, actors, individuals. It's also been, for example, in a place like Mukachevo, the university there, that kind of the professors and the teachers who opened the dormitories and, supported IDPs, receiving a lot of different actors in the whole of society who stood up immediately to support fellow Ukrainians fleeing and who were, impacted. Everyone is impacted, but impacted in different ways by the full-scale invasion. And now how to ensure that they continue being supported to lead and to evolve, develop further the response going forward, it's key. And they're being given the resources to do so, because it's not just saying, it's great, you've done a good job, we morally support you. As the colleagues were saying, you need the financial resources to do that. One of the things that, so inside Ukraine, UN Women and together with UNHCR, the Humanitarian coordinator, have led discussions with women-led CSOs on how we can further support them going forward. This week, there is a meeting among women-led Roma CSOs, and this is a process that's continuing. There was also from the so-called pooled fund, the Ukrainian Humanitarian Fund, a special allocation last year, 20 million specifically for CSOs to support the response. So there are some steps, but I think we cannot lose this opportunity to improve, develop further the way we do things from our experiences in Ukraine that we can apply in other situations, because the fundamental, core need and value to have local organizations at the center, at the heart. They know the situation the best. It's their country. They're going to remain there long after we have all left, which we should do, because we're not there for our own sake. We're there to contribute to filling a need, a gap during a period of time. How we can, develop that further. So I think, I very much, and that's why we have these initiatives, welcome these discussions and concrete proposals on how we can kind of institutionalize some of the lessons learned and take those forward, because it's key. The people of Ukraine need to be at the heart of identifying the needs, the capacities, the vision for their country and future, and we're there to support that, not to do it for them or duplicate.
Do we have any questions in the room or comments? Well, while people are thinking, okay, we have one question.
I'm Kristen Sargent, and I am currently self-employed, exploring new opportunities. I am curious what the unique cultural aspects or cultural nuances of the Ukrainian people, you would want to share with an American audience that we might not understand in best supporting the localization efforts. I know certainly I happened to be abroad in Nepal during the earthquake there in 2015 and saw firsthand how their culture was key to really having the right support on the ground. And I don't know enough, if I'm honest, about the Ukrainian people. And so could you provide a little bit more context to what you need specifically based on who you are?
Olena or Karolina? Either one of you want to chime in?
Maybe
Karolina, you want to chime in first?
We can hear the audience, so if someone can
okay. So let me can you hear me okay, Karolina? Okay. So the question was, and I won't say it as eloquently as you did, what do we need to be aware of in terms of the culture of the people of Ukraine in best supporting your efforts? Have I captured that?
Okay, I can jump in if you want to. I think the cultural thing now in Ukraine is that we all you need to understand what we are fighting for, and we're all fighting for freedom. And the thing is that at least what I heard and what I experienced with the meetings with international donors, that can be really kind of offensive or at least not empathetic, is saying something that you can just give up. That you can give up to save more people, and this is what we will never accept or do. And secondly, is that we feel really responsible for our own victory, and the best way to support is to support an action and to understand our point of view, that for sure everything what is happening is terrible, and we know that from the first hand. But at the same time, we need to keep like positive, and we need to like have the spirit to keep fighting. So maybe is to, yeah, that we have this like culture of positivity, like laughing. This is like the line from the great Ukrainian poet Alyse Ukrainka, not to cry, I decided to laugh. So then this is like what a lot of people doing. Yeah, and if you want to like cooperate with us, it's like just to be like equal and to appreciate like the values that we are fighting for.
Thank you. Olena, you want to chime in?
Yeah, I can add many things honestly here. So I think it's mainly the question is about those, let's call it socio-cultural aspects of the humanitarian support, which should be analyzed before the humanitarian missions are coming to some context. That was never done, honestly. I will give you some examples. Localization, as you said, yeah? How many people live in what kind of regions? After the full-scale invasion, the number of the people in the family, their age, disabilities, other vulnerabilities like LGBTQI people, what kind of needs do they have? What are those traditions and practices, social practices in this society or country? You need to analyze so many things just to build up on it, your response to be effective. That means that you don't have to send 16 kilograms of packages with food to vulnerable communities who need to go to the city center to catch up it. You know, if this is a single mother with 3 children, that's our target audience, for instance. And you don't have to say us like, oh, you know, you're sending this addressly, so it's not our approach, so we will not cooperate with you. Because we prefer than people coming to the city center, give their signatures, and somehow need to carry up these 16 kilograms of food. I'm not saying even about what kind of food these packages consists of. So basically, and for instance, you are not sending us cooling blankets. That's also the thing which happened in Ukraine. It's our experience. And honestly, I'm not so optimistic because so many years we have crises and wars in different countries, and nothing had changed in terms of the approaches. I personally spent so many energy on different meetings saying about the needs, localization, vulnerable communities, you know, change of the approaches. But this is such a bureaucratic system, which I think it is not possible just to change. I don't know. I don't see any possibilities. So this is the main thing, because yes, we are Ukrainians on the ground. We are taking care about everything, and we need your support. That's the thing. Like not coming with your rules, imposing on us. Of course, so many people are happy and saying thank you so much for your support because they're afraid that they will be limited in funding. So this is the main point which should be discussed on the high level. I received so many answers like, oh, we know about those issues and problems, but that's also your responsibility. Like that was an answer to me from the humanitarian coordinator to change it. It's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to help people on the ground.
Thank you, Olena. Karolina, I see you have your hand raised. I know we're running out of time, but I do want to give you the opportunity to share your thoughts.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I will just chip in. So true, and the point is that actually about this mapping of the needs, it's crucially important not to do the double work and not to like reanalyze it, because, for example, our community foundation do it also on like monthly basis. And if you like go into cooperation, you just like ask as much as possible, because probably the people who are like rooted on the land, they already have this information, and that could like speed up the process significantly.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Well, I know that we are out of time. Thank you all so much for being with us. And just to Olena and Karolina, thank you for chiming in. I know you have an incredible amount of work, and I hope that we can continue to work together. I, for one, I know speaking for Vital Voices, we are incredibly inspired. I mean, honestly, for me, when we went to Ukraine, and I had been to Ukraine many times in the past, but crossing over into Ukraine on the train at night, getting off the train, and just there was something different, and it was something that I wasn't expecting. And it was what you talk about, Karolina, it was that strength of the people, this incredible strength. And I know I feel this, and I know I speak for all of us at Vital Voices, that is all we want to do is stand behind that strength and support that strength. And, I certainly understand that, humanitarian reliefs are complicated and there needs to be a lot of reform. And I think we're thrilled to have both of you as extraordinary partners from UNHCR in those efforts. And hopefully we can get more women in positions of leadership, because I think that will help us as well to make some of these sorely needed reforms. So thank you both for joining us, and thank you both for being here as part of your travels to the U.S. Thank you.
To you and to
Thank
all of
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.